So I've complained a couple times about the lack of variety in SCP games, how they often use the same concepts or same genre, or it's just a remake of Containment Breach, and the ones I've played that were trying to be different ended up just not being that good. And I'm gonna make a video that goes over even more SCP games, but right now I have to ask a major question. Why? Why is there so little variety in games for such a massive and diverse universe? Why only now do we see so many unique games in progress? And I'm gonna try and answer that question today. I originally started this thinking about how badly I wanted an SCP management game, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized this is a problem that every SCP game faces. So I figured it's not just about management games, which I'll talk about later, but about why we only have a select few games at all. And maybe one answer to that is first, that the SCP Foundation fills a niche online space. Even while the site is bigger than it's ever been, it's still got a very specific and split audience. These are people interested in being caught up on a never-ending fictional universe with no canon. Some people just consume content about SCP without focusing on the wiki. Some people prefer to enjoy it from a distance or without going too deep. Some will go all the way and consume as much about it as possible. And some just subscribe to YouTube content for it. By the way, thank you for 1,000 subs. If you want to see more, please subscribe. But anyway, this answer that the wiki is niche doesn't sit right with me. Despite how split the audience is, and even if some people don't pay that much attention to the wiki, I know there's a lot of people like me who enjoy many aspects of the community. Even if I keep my distance from really long, convoluted articles that require knowledge of several other long articles to understand, I would play the hell out of a good game, same as many others. So I don't think there's a lack of interest, or even a lack of devs who would want to make a game in the SCP universe. Even though the Foundation fills a niche role online, it is still quite popular and there is interesting content surrounding it outside of the main community. I think it's all about the process of game development. Game development can be fun and interesting. It's a frustrating but rewarding activity, and it can also be hell. Imagine you want to make a game about a highly respected multiversal writing project that plays with extremely complicated ideas and any topic you could think of. Where do you even start? There's 8,000 anomalies. You have to know what game you're making, and to do that while incorporating enough things from the wiki to be interesting, it will take a lot of prep and even more work implementing everything. You could make an experience around one anomaly like the very first SCP game did, where you just walk downstairs for a while, but this is not a very notable or replayable game. It's a one-time, easy-to-replicate idea. There are singular anomalies you could use that are more interesting, but I guarantee they will take a lot more effort and be way more complicated. In fact, there are a lot of articles describing objects that are probably complex enough to require their own game to fully explore them. So imagine you're a game dev and you don't want to make something super complex. That leaves you with objects that are better for game design, the classic murder monsters. In my opinion, this is why we see so many Breach-likes and first-person shooters. Many game devs don't want to make a super complicated game, so why not make the game where monsters chase you? Again, and honestly, I can't blame them. If you want to make an interactive experience with specific SCPs, you would really need extreme passion for that one specific vision in order to spend the time making it good. Enter SCP Secret Files. This game is peak because it chose multiple specific, non-complex anomalies which all feel like they belong in the game. And it doesn't feel like your typical survival horror SCP game. It's way more invested in telling a great story, to the point where it doesn't even just feel like a game, it feels like a whole experience. It focuses on the process of working for the Foundation and sets up believable and easy to follow stories within this universe. All this to say, this game is clearly the work of a team that had a very specific idea of how they wanted to make it, and not every game is gonna be like that. Many devs would rather make a small, easy game, and I won't hate them for it, that's totally fair. But obviously, these longer and more in-depth games, or hell, even something slightly less deep, would still take a significant amount of work because games aren't easy, and working with SCP also isn't easy. There are also, of course, those who want a game with lots of SCPs, but I assume we haven't gotten one of those because of the sheer amount of work it would take. It would get difficult to make even one, so it's not a very smart idea to try and make all of them if you're like one person or a small team, because by the time you're done, it's gonna be 2070 and the wiki will have added thousands more anomalies. You will have to choose ones that fit together either for your genre or theme. Murder monsters all work together in one game because all you really need to do is pick ones with unique abilities and give them all the goal of killing the player. This fits them all pretty easily into the survival horror genre. It doesn't help that all these classics are mostly meant to be spooky evil creatures anyway, with creepypastas in mind. In conclusion, if we wanted more games that aren't survival horror, we would probably need some more interest in anomalies that can fit different themes, and people who know exactly what they're making from the start, or a person who is willing to search through the wiki for something that fits what they're going for. All of that requires dedication. I mentioned management games earlier, and I want to dedicate a large part of this video to them, because I think they really show what I'm talking about. The management game is something like Dwarf Fortress, Oxygen Not Included, City Skylines, Prison Architect, Factorio even, etc. These games focus on managing resources and solving problems through construction and scheduling. You are constantly working to solve a big puzzle with no solution. It only has a hypothetical end state where it just functions without falling apart that often. Some time ago, I personally explored several SCP management games which are all unreleased, with a few being dead, and I'd like like to show you some. SCP Facility Manager is a very bare-bones, top-down management game which seemingly was pretty early in its life when it eventually died. Yeah, spoilers, this one is dead. It died around early 2023, after having a Steam page up for 3 years. And now the Discord just has, like, the start of an ARG or some shit. There's very little information to go off of here. Obviously, you have rooms holding anomalies and hallways for your personnel to walk through, and not much else. This is about the bare minimum when it comes to an SCP manager, and I don't say that as a criticism, there's really not much game to criticize here, but I mean, considering how unfinished this game is, it is just the most straightforward starting point for anyone who wants to make an SCP management game. You choose the style, you make some structures, you create characters to perform actions. We've got the main shell of the idea, but nothing has really been placed inside of it. Now, despite the other games I'll be covering being far more interesting, this one still stands out to me the most because I feel like it confirms all of my thoughts I laid out earlier. There are just so many directions you could go from here. Where do you go? I'm sure the devs had an idea for it, but as someone looking at the project from the outside after it's been abandoned, I struggle to see how I would have the motivation to continue knowing what lay ahead. The implementation of systems that I have to make sure all function together, that have to incorporate the existence of several anomalies, each with their own abilities. I mean, I don't know if I had the dedication for that, so I can understand why this project got left behind. They seem to have made a lot of music for the game and even figured out their art style, which to me says the holdup for the project was in the programming and actually putting the game together. Now that game was a pretty solid starting point for what I'll be exploring from here, but first I think it's important to cover a game that actually embodies what I think of when I think of an SCP management game. A successful game that serves as technically an SCP manager while having its own charming identity and interesting universe, with challenge and replayability and a lot of creativity. It's Lobotomy Corporation. This is the absolute peak of SCP content, and it's not even SCP content. It manages to have a good story and give all its characters and creatures the intrigue of any equivalent from the SCP universe. The game plays so well because it has reasonable goals and a design that encourages exploration rather than going to the wiki and seeing what you have to do, even if sometimes I have to use it after I sat for an hour trying to figure out why this guy was instantly killing me every time I researched him. How was I supposed to know to look away? In LobCorp, you are given new anomalies over time and have to learn what type of research to use on them, and there is a constant risk of failure causing a containment breach that threatens to kill your employees, which you spend so long leveling up. Meanwhile, there is some mystery in the story, and your facility keeps expanding to handle more anomalies and employees. There is a great sense... That's the wrong kind of there. There is a great sense of stakes and consistent growth throughout the game. God, I can't continue after that. There's a great sense of stakes and consistent growth throughout the game because whether you like it or not, you will have to grow and take risks as expectations get higher. Each day you have a goal of collecting a certain amount of energy from your interactions with the anomalies, and this goal also grows throughout the playthrough. Now, this game made pretty much all the right decisions in terms of game design, starting with the fact that it's not SCP. That's right, what really makes this game so smart is that it's its own thing. Using an SCP comes with a lot of issues, as I've said, picking them, figuring out how to implement them, making sure they all serve a unique purpose, and making an interpretation of them that fans will like. By separating from the SCP universe, the devs are able to make their own abnormalities where they can guarantee each is unique and can live up to its own standards, rather than being tied to expectations and interpretations of something else. It also allows for their own universe with its own weird logic. In an SCP game, I would really be more bothered by where the hell this energy is coming from, but this is its own world with different rules, so I don't care. Actually, I don't even remember how that works. It's also possible that not every SCP in a game would have an item based on it. It might not always make sense, like, are you gonna cover your D-class with shit from 173? How's that gonna buff them? But here, they can do a lot with that concept because it's not SCP, it doesn't work like SCP. The game also removes a major feature that every other SCP game has to include, D-class. See, in those worlds, it makes sense to have your high-level smart people taking notes safely while a convicted mass murderer is being torn apart by an absolute abomination. But it's possible that would remove the stakes from researching, so, since this game has its own world where it can do what it wants, the researchers do everything themselves. You have clerks that just wander around the departments and kinda help with escaped abnormalities. I mean, they don't help that much, but they're doing their best. But otherwise, they don't do anything else. They're supposedly there just to help with the jobs the player doesn't see, while your main goal is to research, and figuring out how to research something is super rewarding. Overall, Project Moon made very good choices when creating this game to give it stakes, interest, and satisfying gameplay. So when I talk about these next two games, just know this is exactly what I think of when I imagine an SCP management game. It's not enough to just have D-class researchers, containment breaches, etc. as if they're references or just because other games have them. It all needs to serve its own purpose. It needs to fit together like a puzzle, and it needs smart design. Otherwise, the player's actions may not feel impactful or satisfying or like there was any risk involved. So now let's cover SCP Maintain and Control. Wait a minute, is this just Prison Architect? Is this legal? Honestly, this game looks like it has promise, though I'm still uncertain if it will release. The dev, Glorified Pig, has made other small games which seem cool, but this one seems to have been halted halted for some time with work on it being on and off, and that's fair. If this is a lone dev, then it makes sense other things will take priority and work on the project will stagnate, but I can't yet say the game is fully abandoned, which is lucky because I would like to see where this goes. I think that putting SCPs into a game like Prison Architect is actually pretty smart. Every picture on Steam shows a variety of interactions and characters, but they're only human. I don't see any anomalies besides the doctor, and what is that? Oh, I think that's just fire. I think the kitchen is on fire. This game to me seems like a more established version of Facility Manager, just with more content to look at, because it's clearly further in development. I hope that Glorified Pig can get to a place where life allows for game development again, because this could really go places. However, I must say, I feel like this goes back to what I said earlier. The humans seem to be at least functional enough to get into the Steam page, but I only see one anomaly. It will probably take a lot of work to make more, give them unique interactions, etc., especially for a single person. And I'm sure there are more things to add in terms of buildings and human characters. The next game, though, is being made by a whole team. SCP Foundation Simulator has been in development for at least 2 years, and it seems the scope has changed a little bit since the start. Miracle Bread is trying to make many types of rooms and lots of things to manage. They started with 2D and upgraded to 3D. I'll admit I prefer the 2D look, it's so clean and satisfying. It seems like they're trying to go pretty in-depth with this game. Out of the ones I've shown, this has the most to look at, and it has me a bit excited, though there is still not a planned release date, and I'm sure we won't have one for a time. Now, they've got 6 SCPs, all being classic ones, and I've been unsure if I wanted to mention the anomalies that appear in these games, and I will, but with a massive warning. This is not going to be me criticizing these games, just voicing a concern, because I feel like it's unfair to criticize these before they're finished. I have to talk about it. We've all seen these before, and I'm really hoping that this is just the starting point, because like I said, these are probably easier anomalies to make in-game, but I really want non-fan favorites, or at least ones that haven't appeared in games. I know 999 is on the list, but like, it's gonna be in here, so there is so much on the wiki to choose. It would be lovely to pick out some anomalies that haven't had time in the spotlight. I'm gonna be a little annoyed if we finally get a management game and it's just Containment Breach as a management game. I'm not gonna complain too much because at least we're finally getting something. But yeah, if you've seen my previous video on SCP games, you know how I feel about only seeing the same thing for 12 years. I somehow summoned several devs in the comments of my other video, so I'm gonna say this bit hoping that Miracle Bread actually watches. Please keep going. Don't rush this, keep doing what you're doing, and I will be watching your career with great interest. I really hope that this game will be complete and bring some more excitement for SCP games with it. It seems there's a newfound interest in SCP games, and it will be really cool to see Foundation Simulator among a new era of SCP media. No pressure. Even if this game releases with the stuff I can currently see, I think it'll be a massive step forward for the gaming side of the Foundation. Now, I think my biggest questions with how this game will go are about progression and gameplay loops, like what happens when you fully research something, or how likely is a breach, how much interaction can things have with each other, stuff like that. Miracle Bread actually has a Patreon going, it seems, where there's playtesting, so I'm not going to spend my money on that, but if you are interested, I'll leave links in the description. Anyway, this is all I had for this video. I just wanted to talk about these games I found, rant about SCP media, and also discuss why Lobotomy Corporation works so well. Everything will be linked in the description, the games, the music, and you can click this other video if you want. I'll see ya.